Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, I welcome back Karen Riordan of Menlo Technologies and Peter Joeckel of TurnOnDynamics to talk about the latest wrinkles in Microsoft's plan for the GP customer base and their partners. Changes to legacy ERP solutions like GP can get emotional because there's so much at stake for both customers and partners. Solutions like GP that have survived for decades have proved their worth at thousands of organizations. So when publishers like Microsoft start to increase their focus on getting customers onto newer products, in this case, SaaS ERP, it can make for a difficult transition. Karen, Peter, and I discuss a few of the recent developments in the GP space, like new assessments offered by Microsoft, and how all the interested parties here are going to adapt in the changing landscape. All right. Well, I'm joined here by Karen Riordan and Peter Joeckel once again. Hey, Karen. Hey, Peter. Great to have you back.
Thank you, Jason. Great to be here. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Jason. Always great to be here. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Peter.
Same to you both. It's always fun to catch up. I think since we're right here at the end of the year, beginning of the new year, it's a great time to catch up on some topics that we visited on earlier in the year. Like I guess I'd sum it up as the I hate to say the fate of GP customers, but sort of where the GP customer base is at Microsoft right now, how Dynamics GP customers sort of fit in as Microsoft customers, and what they might be seeing, hearing, experiencing, and their counterparts in the partner channel, what the traditional GP partners and perhaps the modern GP partners are hearing and experiencing. Since we've last done one of these podcasts together, do you have any observations on what's changed, what's evolved specifically in the GP customer base, Karen?
I think that Microsoft is becoming a lot more aggressive in contacting GP customers and talking to them about the migration to the cloud. One thing that I find very interesting is Microsoft will be reaching out to your GP customers. So if you are a partner or a GP customer, be prepared. If you have a renewal coming up, Microsoft is going to reach out to you and talk to you about participating in a migration assessment. Now, I'm just going to say, Jason, you have two very smart people on the phone who have been talking about these assessments now for a long time, and super excited that Microsoft is kind of jumping on that bandwagon. I think that's important for GP customers or NAV customers to really partake in those assessments to make sure they're moving to the right solution, be it Business Central, F&O, or something outside of the Microsoft family.
Yeah, I guess in other words, if you're a GP customer, you owe it to yourself to at least know where the market's going, where all these different products are going, to know where your future lies as well. Peter, what's your take? I've heard you say that you've observed that GP customers have not been maybe as excited as Microsoft would have hoped so far about the idea of moving off their GP systems overall.
Yeah. Hey, Jason. So I was going to start the conversation with kind of an interesting observation that when we did this series, I forget, it was, several podcasts and blog posts that we did on this topic. And they were obviously very popular because for the longest period of time, I could go out and Google BC, GP to BC upgrades, and all our content was right at the top. And just for fun, I did it again just before we started this. And a lot of the written stuff that we did is still, close to the top. It's not at the top anymore. But it's funny, like on the visuals, on the picture side, most of the pictures that we created to kind of, talk about this, they're still, right up at the very top. And so this was a topic that generated, a lot of interest, as far as people, interested in what we had to say about Microsoft. And if you remember, what we were trying to do is we were trying to take on the position that, Microsoft pushing their GP folks to upgrade to, BC, there probably, was a more nuanced discussion behind the scenes. And so the interesting thing we found out behind that is that all of that, push from Microsoft pretty much generated a large yawn because, my own experience and everybody that we talked to was from a partner standpoint, the number of upgrades was almost, non-existent. And so what's interesting to me is, besides the fact that we created great content around a topic that perhaps nobody was interested in, is the fact that Microsoft is now kind of doubling down on this, on this push of taking GP customers to BC, and especially with this concept of calling them and offering, analysis, right? And the number of thoughts I have around that, I probably need to take a sedative, to calm myself down, as somebody that's had to make a living selling and nurturing these types of accounts. But because in my mind, there's a lot of, even if this is done with the best of intentions, there's a lot of unintended consequences of somebody calling into your account base and, discussing this kind of a, idea with them.
Well, how unusual is it for a company running GP to hear from a Microsoft rep directly?
So I do know that Microsoft calls them on occasion. And when this migration from GP to BC was first being introduced, they started making these calls again. And the reason that I know it is that our customers would then call us and say, I want to upgrade to Business Central. It would be like, well, it's really not an upgrade, right? It's a new software package. Well, Microsoft called me and they told me I could upgrade to Business Central. So sometimes the calls are not perceived or the message gets lost in translation, which I think is the risky part that Peter is talking about, is whatever that message that's being delivered to a CFO or a controller sometimes get lost when they then talk to their partner about it. And like this whole idea of upgrading to Business Central, and why that may or may not be really the right way of saying it.
Yeah, Jason, if you think about it for a second, I don't know, what are there, 50,000 perhaps Great Plains, companies today? I think that's a decent round number. And who are these people that are going to be calling them, right? Every one of these is its own nuanced, business that has different requirements. They have there's a ton of different, things that go into each one of these individual businesses that, the folks that sold, implemented, and nurtured for 1, 2, 3, 10 years, right? These accounts that know these things in detail. And so and if you think about the Great Plains market in general, right? What was the statistic that your typical Great Plains customer had somewhere near 10 ISVs, right? So if you think about all the different things that it means to be a Great Plains customer, and to have somebody call in and say, hey, we got this great idea, we got this great new product, this is an upgrade, right? Probably that there needs to be a nuanced conversation around that is understating it, by some logarithmic scale. There's no nuance to a telemarketer calling into these folks and saying, hey, Mr. Generic GP customer, we can upgrade you. So forget about the next step, which are these, evaluations. Just that initial call, what that typically does, in my experience, it creates a panic call, back to us. Is this something we have to do? Should we do? What are we doing? It's heavy-handed and probably, not. And what it does is it creates a bunch of excitement at the partner level that a lot of partners, are not in a real good position to deal with, right? So take a look at your typical Great Plains partner, right? They're not in a position to field a bunch of phone calls, repositioning or answering questions, right, around this. What it does is it creates a bunch of, work, effort, sales, whatever kind of activity that a lot of folks are not ready for, right? What about all the partners that, don't read in detail that this is going to happen, and all of a sudden their customers call them on this, right? Or somebody more sophisticated like Karen that is ready, they still have to take, what is it, a salesperson, right? Somebody that could be selling and now has to, talk to a customer and go through all these, various scenarios. Anyway, it's not ideal.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too, Peter, in that, right, I was an owner at SSI Consulting, and we did one thing. We implemented ERP solutions. So hundreds of GP and SL customers. And over the last few years, we have been acquired and now part of a large Microsoft partner, right? So they were partner of the year in 2019. but they are a platform partner, and they can speak Azure, platform, IoT, business intelligence like the best of them. But when it comes to talking that story to a CFO, we get lost in translation, right? So when you have technical people trying to educate a CFO or a controller, we're just not talking the same talk, right? I get a CFO who calls me and they say, well, Karen, I don't understand. How is this move to Azure going to save me money? How much more is it going to cost me, right? They're more focused on those debits and credits. And the flip side of that is if you were an old fashioned partner like we were at SSI Consulting and one of the best, we were not a CSP partner. So we were not able to sell you or help you migrate from a license perspective to Business Central because we were not a cloud service provider. And so Microsoft is shifting not only what's happening to customers, but also to partners who service those customers. So if you are not a CSP, a cloud solution provider, you can't sell the licenses to your customers. So you've got to partner with other people who do it, the margin changes and things like that. And it really has to be equitable for everybody. And sometimes that does get lost in translation.
I'm going to give you a bit of a counter argument, and that's if I'm a customer, I want my partner to know what those future-looking options are for ERP. I want them to be able to explain those to me. I want them to be able to transact them if I need them. Why shouldn't I expect that from my partner and not expect my partner to be ahead of Microsoft in laying all this out for me somehow?
I think that there's lots of reasons, but off the top of my head, I would think of a few. One is the Microsoft way the only way and the right way for the customer? So you have to be prepared as a partner to have that conversation at a much broader level, right? So let's talk about what you're doing, what you want to do, and are these Microsoft solutions going to fill that need? So I think it's important for partners to be willing to have those conversations. I also believe that because Microsoft has kind of hurt the partner channel with the CSP program, maybe they're all not super excited to share that vision with the customers because it's not a win-win for them. And so they just rather you stay on GP and help you with other pieces and parts of your business. So I think it kind of lots of different answers that could be there. But, if I'm an old fashioned, like I said, I'm speaking of myself, ERP girl in this new world, I can't even sell CSP unless I'm part of a bigger platform play.
Karen, that's a great point. Your reaction to this is completely different whether you're, like you said, an old-fashioned partner or whether you're part of, one of these big, Microsoft partners that can take advantage of all the areas where Microsoft is, quite frankly, pushing you to make money, right? Mm-hmm. And Jason, to answer your question, I agree with you 100%. I think partners should very well understand what the options are for folks, right? And so that's not the question here. The question is, if you think about, especially the Great Plains channel and their experience in the Microsoft world, what is it that a lot of them have done, right? A lot of them have added products, that are not Microsoft, right? And so, there's that situation, that Microsoft created for itself. But think about this, and think about it from this standpoint, is that relationship that you've created with that customer and the ins and outs that telemarketer won't be able to understand in multiple calls, right? At the base level, wouldn't it be good if they called the partners and said, hey, let's form a strategy to call customers together, right? And I have some messaging and you need to fill me in on some things. And what about that, right? Because now it's a partnership, and you don't feel like your customers are being called blind and now you have to react as opposed to actively being involved in some kind of an activity, right?
Yeah, I can certainly understand that as well. I mean, it's I just posted an article with some perspective from another Microsoft partner, Innovate, and they have a few ex-Microsoft team members on their team now, some who are actually focused on the on-prem ERP to BC or F&O, pathways as well. And it's interesting. It was Chad Sogi who is one of those people who's sort of leading that for their practice. And he mentioned, from all his time at Microsoft, the options that go into planning a Business Central migration with historical data and transactional data and master data and all the decisions that go into that. I mean, we didn't get into it in depth, but just hearing him talk about it a little bit, I mean, it's very clear it's not a one or two or 3 call kind of a decision. It's I guess months long decision with big consequences, and it doesn't come down to maybe, I think, Karen, to your point, a cost savings, really, right? It's going to be to some extent a strategic decision and a long-term sort of IT decision, right?
Yeah, we are actually in the process of doing this for someone who is using GP. They're not one of our customers, but they came to us just because of our migration offer. And they needed to determine if they wanted to upgrade their GP. Did they want to look at Business Central as well as other products that were in the market? And this effort was led by their IT group, and sort of we pulled along the accounting team to get them excited about whatever the decision was. And after, a lengthy assessment of, taking a look at their data, and I love when people say we're not very complicated. I don't think we have any third parties. And then you look in their system and you realize they got, as Peter said, 8 or 10 of them. And then you have to match that functionality to the gap analysis. It's not something for the faint of heart, but it is a much better way for customers to go because now they have this gap analysis to determine, what's going to work and what isn't going to work. So the assessment program is still, in my humble opinion, the right path for the customer to go. Just make sure you're talking to partners who can provide you with options. Business Central, F&O, or maybe something outside of the Microsoft family, because one solution does not fit all.
What about the licensing offers that Microsoft has made related to GP? And I guess it's not just GP, right? I think it also applies to other on-prem legacy Dynamics ERPs. But has that been something that should all partners be talking to all of their eligible customers about, at least what some of those offers have been?
Yeah, so Microsoft is getting better at answering questions, right? When this whole CSP to EP renewal offer came out, we had 2 or 3 pages of questions. Well, what if? And Microsoft is getting better at describing that. But sort of at a very high level, if at the time of your renewal, you want to also subscribe to an equal or more dollar value on your Business Central, you can sort of have these dual license. And it's really when you start to get into well, what if I need more? Or what if I need less? Or what if I decide to drop out of the program? What are the penalties and things like that? So sometimes it really is the details of that program that you need to talk to your customers about, because it may not be right for everyone. So I think having that conversation makes sense. But there's also, you can just go right in with the discounted license without being part of one of these programs where you have to be very careful about making sure the value of your Business Central licenses do not drop below the value of your enhancement plan, because then you violate that the offer, the program. So I do believe that they have some interesting ones out there, Jason, but golly, there's a lot of nuances to those programs that you really have to make sure you review with the customers so that in the end, it doesn't cost them something that they weren't prepared to pay.
Yeah, and I've got 2 thoughts on pricing. Number one, anytime it's more difficult than thermodynamics, right? What it does is it creates a lot of activity and unintended consequences that complicate the life of the partner, right? And my second thought is where the partner's life is really complicated. If you take a look at the arc of all of this pricing, right, there's 2 components that traditionally where partners have made money. They've made money on software and they've made money on services. Well, I looked at this a long time ago and said, I'm not going to make any money on software because that's the direction that this is all headed in. And so I figured out a long time ago how to run a business where the only money coming in the door is going to be services, right? But selling this stuff hasn't suddenly become, simpler and less complicated. And a lot of these, a lot of ERP deals, they require a heavy lift on the sales side, right? And a lot of that money used to be defrayed by software sales. Nobody makes any money anymore on the software side. And the unintended consequence of that, right, is that everybody has not pivoted to a model where, they have this great vertical or they increase their billing rates, right? The unintended consequence of not making any money on the software side of this business is the following. You have to sell more deals, and you have to sell more deals desperately. And when you sell deals desperately, you will tell even more fairy tales about what the software is going to do and how much the implementation is going to cost than you typically did in the old days when you told ridiculous fairy tales already. Okay. And so what you have is you have this cycle, right, of bad sales, bad deals, bad sales, bad deals. And if you think that's something in my imagination, I assure you that is not. If you take a look in our industry on the bad implementations, and I believe, even Microsoft behind the scenes recognizes that their biggest issue in ERP is customer satisfaction. So to me, the pricing, two issues. Number one, they're too complicated, unintended consequences. Simplify them. Either share more of the money with the partner so that they can, make some kind of a reasonable livelihood. Simplify it and share more of the money. But that's just my opinion.
Well, so Peter, I'm holding here in my hands the FAQ for the offer that we were just talking about, the CSP Enhancement Plan Renewal offer. So this is the partner FAQ. It's 10 pages long. So again, the devil is in the details. So, you really need to be so careful when you talk to your customers about this, because in a sales call from Microsoft to your customer, they're not going to be able to address these 10 pages of FAQs that you are then going to have to talk to your customer about when they call you kind of all excited or frantic about these offers out there. And I agree, Jason, you need to know about it. Don't stick your head in the sand, but you also will have to do the right thing for the customer and make sure they are aware of the devil's in the details.
Yeah, I think I did a piece on it when that offer initially came out, and I got some really varying perspectives from different partners. Some see that or saw that option as really, creating a bit of chaos and it's confusing to reconcile, and then other partners, as I recall, seem to say, yeah, it's great. We're already signing people up and getting them onto this and saving them money. So it was certainly not a one take, kind of approach. I think the one thing I did here was that the timing wasn't great when it came out in what was it, late October, and that it was maybe not rolled out as smoothly or as at the right time. Mm-hmm. And like you said, 10 pages. That's a lot to take in.
That's a lot of FAQ.
Yeah.
And, I thought about this a lot. And sometimes it comes across like, from a partner side, when you get something like this dumped on your head, and like I said, it creates the unintended consequences. That your reaction is to quote unquote complain about it, and you have this theory that the evil Microsoft, right, is doing this stuff. And the more as I've thought about this over the years, what really you have, especially in the ERP space with Microsoft, is this these incremental decisions made by people that obviously have never worked a day in selling, supporting, has never been in the shoes of a partner, right? They've never ever had to do this, right? And so they probably, Microsoft hires, the brightest and smartest people in the world, right? Those are the folks that are attracted to do this kind of work. And so they will look at this stuff and they will come up with these very intricate, sophisticated, multi-level, programs, when reality, this stuff needs to be simplified and less complex, right? And so I just think it's, year after year, decision after decision, where you end up having, people with, I think, probably good intentions, but the good intentions on the side of, the software publisher is always follow where the money is, right? And if you strip away everything off of these programs, everything is intended to increase gym memberships, right? That's the only thing that they're interested in. That's why at one point, they were the most valuable company in the world because of gym memberships, right? People sign up to come to their gym, right? And they get their credit card and they pay every month. And so all of these programs, all of these pricing, ideas, they're all intended to drive gym memberships.
So, Peter, I think that that's a very interesting analogy, as I think about my New Year's resolutions. But it's also the description of an ERP partner, right? And I believe that Microsoft is challenging all of us to say, you're not just an ERP partner anymore. The ERP is just the part of the overall solution. And I think that's really where the challenge is for partners to help customers as well. It's like, we don't want you just to go in there and sell the value of the new ERP, but it's the value of the entire new platform. Put your data, as we were talking earlier, in the Azure data lake so that I don't have to worry about having a detailed data migration. All I have to do is write, smart list to view it in the Azure data lake. So I believe that the Microsoft storyline is to consider that while accounting and the finance is super important and a critical part of a business, but it's just part of the overall Microsoft strategy. And I really believe that that's where Microsoft is taking us. Is everybody prepared from that, from a partner perspective, from a customer perspective? I think that's a to be determined. But the way I read the tea leaves is ERP is just a part of the overall Microsoft stack. And, you jump in with both feet or you don't.
Karen, I agree with you 100% that is their, mission, right? And that is their vision. And you know what? I don't care. You know why? Because accounting, you know what? Accounting is the lifeblood of your company, right? And so to have it as, oh, now it's part of the overall Microsoft technology stack, as far as I'm concerned, is horse hockey, right? Because what is the greatest single partner, partner ecosystem for mid-market ERP software that you've ever seen or been a part of?
Golly, well, in the old days, it was certainly the Great Plains was certainly one of the best.
I'm going to propose that it was the Great Plains folks, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what was their 100% undying focus? They wanted to install Great Plains on companies and do it better than anybody else, and just 100% slavish attention to making sure that was a great accounting lifeblood of your system experience, right? Does all this other technology, right, that people have buried accounting software in, at the end of the day, does it really matter? No. My contention is that all technology has done to accounting software is make it more expensive to implement, more expensive to keep up and running, right? And more expensive to upgrade. Back in the day, you could install Great Plains. Your ex-CPA guy showed up with the briefcase and he had a bunch of discs, right? Now, I'm not a Luddite. I understand technology and I think technology is wonderful. The problem that I have is technology's accounting software does not have to be buried in all of this expensive, convoluted software that is part of the quote unquote stack, right? Now, back in the day, I think there's this great reason where Microsoft controlled, Windows and Excel and Word and all these other, components that from an accounting standpoint you used all the time. And so the fact that Microsoft had them all playing nicely with each other, that's great. Okay. But in my, in my work lifetime, implementations of accounting / business systems went from being driven, right? Driven and run by the business, right? To being driven and run by the IT departments. That's his light bulb that went off in my head. And why? Why? Microsoft would like us to be part of their overall vision. Fantastic. But that doesn't mean that vision is correct as far as what you're trying to accomplish as somebody trying to run your accounting software, right? And when the vision says, hey, that ERP software is just like that ERP software over there, but this one over here we run in the cloud, and so you should just move it over there, okay? To me, there are so many more complex things that have to be considered and costs, right? Of just saying this is an upgrade, that this whole thing is ridiculous to me. Sorry.
Well, where are GP customers today in terms of like, they've gone through 2020, one of the most, upending years probably anyone's ever experienced in their work lives or in their business, running their own businesses. How did GP customers get through it?
So, Peter, I think Jason is asking a good question that, technology and the way we use it has evolved. And, AP automation, AR automation, all of these technologies are going to make accounting better. And you have to, or it's sometimes better to be part of this overall platform. So I was listening to another podcast just today, and they were talking about exactly that question, Jason. And they said, well, no doubt this has been a difficult year for people. And I asked my grandchildren, and, they're all under 18, and it's the worst year of their life, right? Because they don't have anything to judge it on other than, the short period of time. But if you think about it from a business perspective, I think what businesses learn, and this includes GP customers, SL customers, whatever on-premise application you have, is that one, moving to the cloud or having some type of cloud transition plan is really important to your lifeblood moving forward. And two, we can support a remote workforce. And by having an overall cloud strategy that includes your ERP, only makes it more successful. So while I hear exactly what Peter is saying, I do a lot of work with government contractors. They got to sign those names on those financial reports. But it's also kind of exciting to think that technology is going to change the way we deliver a message. We're going to use machine learning to streamline month-end closing. We're going to start to leverage technology to make accounting sexy again. There you go. I said it. Accounting is going to be sexy again.
Karen, I've always had this vision where, at one point they were integrating, Cortana into everything, right?
Yeah.
And I had this vision, where somebody said, close by or something, and all of a sudden, the year started closing and people were running to their computer going, no, stop, right? So
Yeah.
that's the first thing I thought of there. But you know what, Jason? I think the Great Plains customers are just a microcosm of the business world overall. And the interesting thing is, there's winners and losers, right? And there's literally companies that are blowing the doors off, business like never before. And then there's companies that are struggling to figure out how to make it through the next day. So I don't think it's specifically a Great Plains issue. I think they're just a microcosm of the business world as a whole.
In terms of their satisfaction with their current GP system, are they? I know you described it as a collective yawn. Some of the proposals Microsoft's putting out there. Do you get the sense? I could put this to both of you. I mean, specifically regarding their accounting, do they generally feel like, yeah, this is serving our needs? Is the life sort of bleeding out of their GP systems? I don't know. What are you seeing in that regard?
I've had a chance over the last 3 or 4 months through a little adventure I'm embarking on to talk to a lot of partners and a lot of big partners. And the one that stood out to me was a partner that has 5,000 GP implementations, and talked to them within, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks. And one of the things we talked about was the upgrades to BC. And I said, so, how is that working out for you? He said, well, take a guess on how many we've upgraded. So I said, 5,000. I said, all right, let's see. You guys have done 30. He said, we've done 3. Okay. And so when you have a significant partner with significant resources and an opportunity here for obviously revenue, and out of 5,000, they do 3, that to me is a collective yawn, because obviously nobody's sitting there, thinking, oh my God, this is really something I need to do, right? Karen, I don't know, what is your experience? So you guys have probably upgraded 95% of your folks, right?
Well, no, we have not, but we have done more than 3. So, but not a whole lot more. People don't want to change accounting solutions, right?
No, they don't even want to upgrade GP.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. They don't even want to have to go through an upgrade. This was a painful cycle because of the changes in the 1099 forms where customers were forced to do something, but nobody really wants to do it. So I think that unless Microsoft clearly states that GP and SL and on-premise software is transitioning away, and here's the timeline for that people are going to continue to yawn. We're going to have some folks who are more aggressive and want to be ahead of the curve and make the move, are reading the tea leaves and following the money, saying that we think this is going to happen eventually, so let's do it, now. But I do agree, unless there's a particular reason, be it a compliance, the sunsetting of an application, people don't really wake up and say, "Gosh, let's get a new accounting system. This will be fun."
Hey, Karen, the thing that I don't understand in reading, what Microsoft has pushed out is, to me, to a certain extent, the phone calls are intended to be followed up by, a more detailed analysis, right? Do you have an idea of who and, how those work? I wasn't clear on where that plan was going.
Yeah, so you have to be a certified partner to handle the assessments. Now, so that's not going to be all partners. And so it's very possible that your GP customer is going to have an assessment done by another partner. And there are a lot of rules of engagement, so I don't want
Hold
to
on a
take
second. Hold on a second. Let's say, repeat that slowly.
So there are partners who are certified. It's possible that your assessment could be done by another partner. Now, again, I don't want to, certain rules of engagement, things are, there's a lot of protocol. It doesn't mean that they will present the findings, right? Because that goes to the partner. But in order to have these assessments paid for by Microsoft, you have to be a qualified partner in order to do that. And when I say qualified, it doesn't mean that every partner isn't qualified, but it's a partners who have jumped through all of the hoops and dotted the I's and crossed the T's and have become assessment. I think there's actually a term for it, which I'm drawing a blank for, those partners who are able to do those pieces.
So what we're talking about is Animal Farm for partners. All partners are created equal, but some partners are more equal than others, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, someone said to me once that getting your PhD is not about how smart you are, but about how much you really want it, because you have to jump through so many hoops in order to get there. And I think in some ways that's exactly what this is. You have to have certain certifications and, so many pre-sales people and this and that. So it's not going to be every partner is going to be able to get that title.
Yeah. So Karen, imagine in the position you're in right now, where you're in you're in a large organization where there's no way your customers are going to be analyzed by, somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. So imagine your reaction, let's say back in the old days where there was potential where, maybe not being part of, the partner of the year, right? All of a sudden, other Great Plains partners were rummaging through your client base, doing analysis, right? Just, I imagine your reaction at that point.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, back in the day when Microsoft, even when Microsoft had more kind of, I don't know if you want to call them implementers, but more technical resources, and they were doing some of that work, it still created a lot of FUD within the customers and the partner channel. So I hear you, Peter. I think that it could be a not wanted approach for a lot of partners. Just stay out of my customers. I'll take care of them. But on the flip side, you got Jason saying, hey, maybe we ought to educate our customers. Somebody's got to do it.
And then, the typical thought I have in something like this is when these analyses are run, what is the probability that the end result of this analysis is that the optimal solution is to upgrade to BC?
Golly, that's a good question there. Probably worth a podcast in the future when I have a better handle on numbers, since the program is just starting out. But We talk about the cost of the software being so inexpensive. In the old days, a lot of times Microsoft would have offers to support implementations, right? Because there was, a partner made money in selling the application. Well, that's not the case anymore. So a lot of times Microsoft is funding the pre-sales activities to help partners, win the business or educate their customers. And that's a little bit of a change from the old Microsoft days or Great Plains days. They're actually funding these pre-sales activities, be it, gap analysis, assessments and things like that. Now, how many of them are going to say that, F&O or Business Central is the perfect fit? I'm going to leave that as a TBD.
Now, doesn't that just kind of reinforce my thought process before of this kind of spiral of companies not being able to make enough money on the software sales and how that leads to, bad channel behavior? You almost have this recognition that you're shifting, some of that money into paid services for upfront analysis, right?
Yeah. I think it is a behavior that is incentivized maybe in the wrong way. But moving to the cloud and buying into the Microsoft vision and strategy, that's what Microsoft is going to spend their money to help partners get there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think those full cloud partners have a distinct advantage going forward.
Yeah,
and I agree. I think, Peter, it will shape those considerations and those incentives and disincentives and disadvantages will shape the partner channel. Will it look different, a year from now? Perhaps it will start. It will change even more in that time. I think it's possible. More mergers, more small firms acquired.
Yeah, I think when Karen and I have our random discussions about if I was Microsoft, I would want to deal with one ERP partner.
Mm-hmm.
From a Microsoft standpoint, the best of all worlds was I have to deal with one partner that handles everything having to do with ERP. The disparate partner types and sheer number of partners from a Microsoft standpoint has got to be a nightmare to deal with.
I think they like having at least a few big ones to keep each other honest, perhaps. But yeah, no, they don't want to deal with a long tail of small, and they've been saying this. I mean, this has been no secret though, right? For years. And I remember there was great consternation on the nav side with this several years ago that these smaller nav shops weren't really welcome anymore if they couldn't talk Business Central. This is when nav to Business Central is a whole different story, but if they couldn't talk Business Central and they couldn't talk sort of the modern technology of whatever Business Central offered compared to nav, they really weren't interested in dealing with those. And if they didn't do a certain number of transactions every year, they weren't interested in really giving them any help anymore.
And at the end of the day, this is a really fun theoretical discussion. But I look at this in the same way as rich congressmen talking about $600 versus $2,000 to folks that can't feed their kids, right, or make their rent payments, right. To them, it's a philosophical discussion. On the ground level, right, it's, hey, I can't feed my kids. And on a ground level, it's a small company or a good-sized company that, oh, yeah, we need to switch over here. And, oh, my God, this costs a lot of money. I'm not doing anything better. And all I have is a nightmare. And I've spent a lot more time, money, and energy than I needed to. So what ends up happening is, real life stuff happens based on these philosophical discussions that people have on how they should move people from this one place where they may be perfectly happy and things may be running 90% well over here so that they can make more money on their their cloud licensing, right?
Yeah, I hear you, Peter, but there's a saying that says, if you're doing the same thing today, then you're falling behind. So it is, again, just thinking from a technology standpoint, we do have to keep challenging ourselves and our customers to say, okay, well, what you're doing today is really awesome and great. But, where you want to be in 2 years, 5 years, what's that growth strategy? And chances are it's going to include more of the cloud, more IoT, more, artificial intelligence. Even if you don't know it yet, you say, I want those things. And I think it is the responsibility of the partners to help their customers, whatever their product line is, to, understand what some of that possibilities could be. Because today's success is not necessarily next year's success.
I agree with you. The smarter the partners are, the better off everybody is.
That's why there's you and me.
Jason, I'm not sure. Are you going to be able to publish this, or is it going to be too crazy?
We'll find a way. Not too crazy. Any other predictions for 2021? I mean, I know we're talking about sort of whether GP customers will adapt, sort of what the partner landscape will look like. And anything else concrete that you'd put on top of that on tape?
Yeah. I am still a glass half full kind of person. I think 2021 is going to open the doors for more understanding of cloud technology and automation and the kinds of things we can accomplish all while working remotely. It's just going to be incredible. So I expect 2021, assuming we can all get vaccinated and be healthy, right? Number one priority. But I think could be a lot of really great things that happen from a technology standpoint in 2021.
Yeah, I think that everybody's going to have to do whatever Microsoft decides they have to do. And I think the only discussion point here is add a level of nuance to the discussion and add some kind of level of understanding that, that these relationships with these customers and the detailed knowledge of their individual companies that's gained over many years, right? And the trust that's associated with that is an important selling point that would probably be better taken into consideration in some kind of a joint effort, as opposed to, hey, we're going to call these guys and then you guys deal with the ramifications of that. Because I still think that, I wonder what the install base is that has a small partner attached versus the number of customers that have a big partner attached. I think that would be an interesting number to understand.
More of a suggestion rather than a prediction there, an aspiration. But understandably, yeah, I wonder. I'm very interested to see. I think it will in 2021 shake a lot of GP customers, shake them up in terms of understanding the value of digital solutions, of cloud-based solutions that aren't on-prem, that are at least, outside of their own office, outside of their own physical data center, and probably build on it from there. Because I think, Microsoft and ISVs and others in the business software world have been putting together this year some very compelling scenarios of how to automate manual processes, how to automate businesses that thought they were really analog. And if businesses are just settling down now, they'll start maybe to your point, Karen, they'll start appreciating some of those more and pull the trigger on dipping their toe in if they haven't already. So I would predict that more GP customers, as part of that maybe larger trend, will start to come around toward into planning for some of those things, whether it's full scale ERP or whether it's just, like you said, adding cloud services, adding, new reporting services, adding, other kinds of automation, like through Power Platform or something. I think more will dip their toe in, I hope.
I agree.
I predict it will all be more complex. It'll all be more expensive. And the folks that understand that the money is in keeping all this stuff running and upgraded, right, those are the ones that are going to do well.
All right. I think we will wrap it up there. I would love to reconnect on this topic and, just kind of banter with you both on other things in 2021. Thank you so much for doing it this year. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. We'd love to touch base next year and see how our predictions are turning out.
Always a pleasure, Jason. Karen, love talking to you.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks to Peter and Karen once again for joining me. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. You can also look for us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.